Welcome back. All right, is your medication safe and effective? Well, if you don't know, I got a chance to catch up with the founder and president of Bioethics International, Dr. Jennifer Miller. She shared some good pharma scorecard results of prescription drug safety and effectiveness for you and your family. Take a look.
So the Good Pharma Scorecard is an index that ranks large pharmaceutical companies and all new medicines and vaccines on their ethical performance annually. We started the Good Pharma Scorecard in part to address the ethics concerns and the gaps in trust around the pharmaceutical sector. Only 10% of the U.S. population trusts that pharmaceutical companies are honest and ethical. 90% think they put profits before people. And we at Bioethics International didn't think this had to be the case. So we developed a set of ethics standards for what it means to be a good, patient-centered, trustworthy pharmaceutical company. And then we benchmark the companies every year against those standards. This year, the Good Pharma Scorecard focuses on one particular issue, clinical trial transparency. So do we know all of the safety and efficacy information about new drugs, all the safety information?
All right, well, it's interesting because, yes, obviously that thought is out there, and this distrust, it's not just a business thing, but this distrust could be hurting our healthcare, right?
Exactly. There's some evidence that when patients distrust the industry, they don't take their medicines, or people don't sign up for clinical trials. And if we don't have people sign up for clinical trials, we can't innovate new cures and therapies. So it's really important that we rebuild trustworthiness into the sector.
Well, and clinical trials is such a mysterious term. You hear clinical trial, clinical trial. Well, there's the transparency in these trials there. How has that changed, and why is that important to doctors and patients?
Yeah, so clinical trials, the term is rather technical. What it really means is it's the experiments in humans that companies conduct to see if a drug is both safe and whether it works to treat a particular disease. So what we look at is every time the FDA approves a new drug, we find all these experiments in people, all these clinical trials that are conducted, and we measure how many of them are publicly available. And why this is important is because we have an evidence-based medicine system, and in order to have evidence-based medicine, you need all of the evidence in the public space so that doctors can write the right prescriptions for the right patients at the right time. So this year we looked at the drugs approved by the FDA in 2014, and what we found is that a median of 68% of all of the trials conducted to gain regulatory approval of a drug are publicly available. So about a third are not, but most are. And if you only look at those trials conducted in patients, meaning excluding the trials done in healthy volunteers, that number jumps way up, and you have 96% of trials conducted in patients publicly available per drug. And that was a significant improvement since our last scorecard. The last scorecard showed only 80-something% of trials in patients were publicly available. So you can see that the industry is improving year after year.
That's really cool. I was going to ask you how you've seen the change over the couple of years of doing it, but it sounds like it's improving, so the scorecard's working. Now, what about future expansion of this scorecard? What are you thinking?
Well, before I talk about what we're going to do next, let me just finish about what we did this year. We didn't just rank drugs, we also ranked companies. And we ranked companies so that we can celebrate the good practices, but also incentivize some of the lower scoring companies to do better. And so this year I'm happy to report that two companies, two out of the 11 that we evaluated, tied for first place. They both scored 100% in our clinical trial transparency evaluations, and those were J&J, Johnson & Johnson, and Sanofi. So we're applauding those companies this year, and we're encouraging the other companies to try and join them next year. We also created a leaderboard where we list the top 5 companies that scored the highest. So not only celebrating the number 1, but the top 5. And next year, we'll be adding more evaluations looking at more drugs in all size companies, and we'll be adding more ethics metrics. Particularly, we'll be looking at inclusivity in clinical trial design, another technical term. But basically, drugs right now are tested on young, healthy, white males, and we want to make sure that everybody has access to clinical trials and clinical trial information.
Well, there you go. Special thanks to Bioethics for all that information.